Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a dynamic that literally shapes every single professional environment out there. That classic tension between pressure and performance. Now, for decades, we've seen this specific management style handed down, right? The one that leans way too heavily on rules, high pressure, and honestly intimidation just to squeeze out results. But today, we're going to flip the script. We're looking at some absolutely crucial hindsight insights from a manager who's sharing exactly what they wish they'd known way earlier in their career. We're tossing out that tired old corporate playbook and getting into the actual nuts and bolts of real leadership and how you truly unlock peak cognitive performance.
So here is a hard, slightly uncomfortable truth we just have to acknowledge up front. Fear might get results, but respect gets loyalty. Look, we have to admit that fear-based tactics can, on occasion, force a quick spike in productivity. I mean, if a manager is yelling or throwing around threats, sure, a team is going to scramble to hit that short-term deadline just to avoid the fallout. It gets a result. But, and this is a massive but, that is not sustainable leadership. A quick, panicked result is definitely not the same thing as a dedicated, high-performing team. If you want that long-term dedication, if you want a team that will actually stand by your side and weather the storm of a really complex project, you need loyalty. And as our source material makes crystal clear, there's just no way to frighten loyalty into existence. It literally only comes from earning genuine respect.
All right, let's move into Section 1, the fear illusion, creating stress and silence.
You know, it's funny. When you look at a workplace driven by fear-based management, you might initially just see a quiet room. Everyone's typing away, looking exceptionally busy, right? But as our source points out, that's an illusion. Fear-based management really only creates two things: stress and silence. That quiet you're hearing in the office, that isn't the hum of focused, happy productivity. It's actually the sound of suppression. It's this highly restrictive environment where open communication is completely shut down. I mean, people just aren't speaking up because the psychological cost of doing so is way too high. The stress of constantly looking over their shoulder, just waiting for the next reprimand, it totally consumes their mental energy. So what do? They keep their heads down and they stay entirely silent.
Which brings us to Section 2, the cost of intimidation, losing your best.
Think about the domino effect that happens in this kind of stressful environment. The very first domino to fall, people just play it safe. They stick rigidly to the absolute bare minimum of their job description because stepping even a toe outside those lines is dangerous. And because they're playing it safe, they absolutely won't share new ideas. I mean, why would they? Suggesting a new idea means taking a risk, and in a culture of fear, the only reward for taking a risk is putting a giant target on your own back. So, once people stop sharing ideas, you suffer an immediate, devastating loss of creativity. The whole innovation pipeline just dries up completely. Following right on the heels of that lost creativity is the loss of trust. The bond between the team and the manager just shatters. And the final domino? The loss of top talent, and fast. High performers, the ones with the most potential, the most drive, they always have options. They are not going to stick around in an environment that literally suffocates them. They'll just walk right out the door, leaving the organization totally drained of its real growth engine.
So you can see there's this incredibly stark contrast in how we can approach growth. On one side, fear-based management is like carrying around a heavy weight. It relies entirely on intimidation and literally results in shutting people down. It's tense, it's restrictive, and as we just saw, it bleeds your top talent dry. But then on the flip side, you have real leadership, and this is defined entirely by empowerment. Instead of acting like an anvil that just crushes people down, real leadership acts like sunlight. It's focused entirely on lifting people up. It's this energetic, inspiring approach that fundamentally changes the whole dynamic of the workplace. It transforms the manager from, basically a wardener, into a true catalyst for the team's success.
So let's talk about the solution in Section 3, the empowerment paradigm, a new way to lead.
Instead of intimidating, you empower. It sounds simple, but how do we actually do it? Well, here's the exact blueprint laid out in the source material. Step 1, recognize effort. When you actively, vocally acknowledge the hard work your team is putting in, you instantly start rebuilding that foundation of trust that fear destroys. You validate their contribution, and you make them feel truly seen. Now, step 2, and this is perhaps the most fascinating, kind of counterintuitive insight we have here, encourage mistakes. Seriously? Think about how this directly combats that whole playing it safe mentality we talked about. If you want creativity, if you want people to start throwing out brilliant ideas again, you have to create a psychological safety net for them to fail. Encouraging mistakes means you're openly saying that you value the bold attempt far more than just safe, flawless mediocrity. When a leader says, hey, I'd rather you try something massive and miss than just do the bare minimum perfectly, the entire dynamic shifts overnight. And finally, step 3, lift people up. The very best leaders view their main job as elevating their team. They act almost like snowplows, right? Just getting out ahead and removing the obstacles out of their people's way. They provide support, and they actively champion the growth of every single individual around them.
Let's bring it all together in Section 4, Inspiring True Loyalty, Making the Switch.
When you actively make this switch from leading by fear to leading by inspiration, the whole atmosphere of your organization totally transforms. Just imagine walking into the office on, say, a random Tuesday morning. Instead of that room full of tense silence we talked about, where people are just keeping their heads down trying to survive until 5 p.m., you walk into this vibrant, energized space. People are actually collaborating, tossing out wild ideas without any fear of being mocked or reprimanded. There's this palpable sense of real momentum, and the source material really emphasizes that this isn't just about giving everyone the warm and fuzzies. It creates a deeply loyal workforce that will literally run through walls for their leadership. They are going to be profoundly grateful to work in an environment where they're respected, challenged, and finally allowed to genuinely thrive.
And that brings us to the final, definitely the most important question of this explainer. It's a question every single person in a position of influence has to ask themselves. Will you manage with fear, relying on this fragile illusion of control while secretly bleeding your team of its trust, its creativity, and its top talent? Or will you choose to be a real leader? Will you empower, lift people up, and truly lead with inspiration to earn that deep, lasting loyalty? Look, the choice of how you lead dictates the entire future of your organization. Take some real time to reflect on that as you continue your own leadership journey. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.